Hey, the Craig Fahle Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible by Samaritas, which is the state's largest private foster care and adoption agency. But they do a heck of a lot more than that. They've been serving homeless families, persons with disabilities, abused and trafficked women. They're also one of the largest resettlement agencies in the state. They provide market rate and affordable housing for seniors and HUD housing for families. And they also have skilled nursing, memory care, and rehab communities in Grand Rapids, Cadillac, and Saginaw. Samaritas, thanks for their support. Great organization, doing great stuff all around the state. Hey, everybody. This is the week that was on the Craig Fahle Show on Deadline Detroit. Glad to have you with me on this Friday as we do this every week. Allan Lengel is here and Nancy Derringer from Deadline.
Hello, hello.
Thank you both for being here.
Yep.
We appreciate it. We sort of go over the big stories of the week, and this week, as usual, lots of stuff happening here. But let's start right here in Michigan, because I thought this was pretty clever. Justin Amash has caught a lot of heat from President Trump recently because Justin Amash basically said, hey, I think he obstructed justice.
Yeah.
He was the lone Republican to sit there and say that maybe some sort of hearings were warranted on this issue. And, of course, President Trump immediately responded by saying, let's find a primary challenger for Justin Amash.
Right.
In which there is one, this Lowell guy who's thinking about running here. Now, here's the great part. Don Trump Jr. tweets out yesterday.
Is that Fredo or Sonny? I'm pretty sure that's Fredo. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Well, that's a tough call.
Okay.
I thought Eric was.
Okay.
Eric was
Neither of
Fredo.
them are Michael. Put it that
Okay,
way.
yeah.
I think Don Trump Jr. is more like
He's Sonny.
more like Sonny because
Yeah.
he's a bit of a hothead.
He's Sonny, but he doesn't have the musculature and the animal Italian sexuality. But go ahead.
So Donald Trump Jr. tweets this out yesterday. He said, "See you soon, Justin. I hear Michigan is beautiful during primary season."
Ooh, burn.
So
Sick
Justin
burn.
Amash responds using Don Trump's own words against him, and he says, "If it's what you say, I love it, especially later in the summer." Which, of course, is
that is a sick
text
burn.
of the email
Yeah.
to the people who are trying to set up the meeting with the Russians and of course, get the dirt on the Clinton campaign.
Yep.
So Justin Amash, now there's something like 16,000 retweets of this already.
Wow.
That's a mic drop. Moment
Well,
for
that's
him.
exactly it.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things. He seems genuinely unafraid of any potential primary challenge and came out as much and said yesterday, he goes, hey, Trump's not popular in my district. This is District 3.
Yeah.
This is West Michigan, big
Right.
chunk of Kent County, which has been solidly Republican for a long time.
Right.
I would think that maybe he has his ear to the ground as much as the Trump campaign
Sure.
probably does at this point in
Well,
time.
I mean, let's not pretend he's entirely motivated by his conscience. I mean, I think you don't make a statement like that without triangulating it with the other stuff. And I was really surprised. I mean, I thought that town hall was an interesting test early on. I thought the town hall, he would just be, they would just chew him up and spit him out. But apparently, a lot of Democrats showed up to cheer him on, to say, you're doing the right thing. You're absolutely right about this. And the red hats in the audience were basically kind of booed down, which is an unusual experience for them.
Well, and Amash, I mean, let's be honest. This is a guy who, takes his positions very seriously. He's very much a libertarian. And he seems to be a somewhat principled guy, whether you agree with him or not.
Right.
He pretty much sticks to his guns across the board. He's had a record of, he ticks off everybody at some point.
Right.
Well, he certainly
I-
ticked off Betsy DeVos.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think from the get-go, he's been a critic of Trump. I mean, it's not surprising that if
Right.
anyone was going to, from the GOP, was going to step forward, it would have been him.
Unlike everyone else, he just didn't act as though he had put his manhood in escrow. Once the returns were in November 2016. So.
Right. Not like our man Lindsey Graham.
Yeah.
Well,
Speaking of manhood and escrow,
It has been an interesting week, though, for President Trump. I don't know if anybody got a chance to watch the George Stephanopoulos interview. If you did not,
Seen snippets of it.
get a chance to watch it, I suggest you watch it because the president is already suggesting that these things were taken out of context, which is really hard to do when it's one continuous piece of video.
Yeah.
It's really hard to do. President Trump
But
basically
you
said...
just say that. He just says, he probably doesn't even know what out of context means as a phrase, seriously. But you say that, and then you're
He doesn't
dumber,
care.
listening with a tenth of an ear to talk radio base here's, it was taken out of context.
Well, this morning he was on Fox after he had told George
he
Stephanopoulos.
did Fox and Friends this morning.
He had said, are you kidding? If somebody came to me, of course I'd want to listen to the information. And why would I call the FBI? And they said, well, the FBI director says that's what you should do. And he goes, well, he's wrong.
Yeah.
And this morning he's like, well, of course, everybody knows I'm a straight shooter. Of course I would call the FBI.
Right.
It's like
No, the day before you said you wouldn't.
Right.
And
Yeah.
nobody, basically what he's trying to do is normalize the behavior by saying nobody would call the FBI. Of course you want the information, but, the Federal Election Commission chairwoman, Ellen Weintraub's her name, had to issue a statement yesterday that basically said, I would not have thought that I needed to say this, but let me make something 100% clear to the American public and anyone running for public office. It is illegal for any person to solicit, accept, or receive anything of value from a foreign national in connection with a U.S. election. This is not a novel concept.
well,
She said, I would not have thought that I needed to say this at the beginning of her statement. I mean,
It's a good one.
it's funny.
She'll be fired soon.
I believe it was MSNBC.
she can't be.
MSNBC had a former Congress member who was coaching Al Gore how to, in debates. And he received a packet that appeared to be stolen material from the Bush campaign. And he said he turned it over immediately. He called the FBI. They showed up that afternoon. They interviewed him. He turned over everything. And I said to myself, that's why they lost. Ethics.
Well, didn't he also say that everybody does this? That if you talk to congressmen and you speak honestly, they will tell you that they do this sort of thing all the time. It's kind of like, okay,
Yeah, nobody's admitting that.
Nobody's going to admit that. I commit felonies all the time.
Well, and it's that may be the thing that finally pushed Sarah Sanders over the edge and decided to, so she said, I'm done, because he's not going to necessarily answer for this. They're trying to do damage control on the statements that he made, where he said he would basically said, yeah, I would do it again. I would take information against my opponent. He said, it's Oppo research. I'm like, well, no, not really. No. It's a little bit different.
No, very different.
Well, it sort of sends a message that, in the Mueller report where they say they couldn't conclusively say that there was collusion, it seems to advance the thought that it would have been collusion if he had the opportunity. And here he's basically saying, yes, if I had the opportunity to collude with a foreign power, yes, I would do it.
Who wouldn't?
So wink, wink, Russia, if you got anything on, Joe Biden or anyone else, bring it on.
Well, again, this may be the thing that made Sarah Huckabee Sanders finally say enough is enough. She's out.
Oh, we found the bottom of her barrel. Wow.
Well, who are we
don't know.
Who are we going to get the truth from now?
Well, I was telling Nancy that in the Sandinista labs where they created the atomic bomb and stuff, the workers there have a little badge, and when the badge accumulates too much radiation, they have to go home.
Yeah.
And her BS badge maybe had just gotten so full, they just said, Sarah, you're going to die if you don't leave now.
Well, I mean, the jokes are all over this one. Somebody's going to say, I'm not going to believe she's leaving till she denies it. I mean, it's just, she did not.
Where did you get that idea? I'll speak in short sentences so you can understand.
She did not handle that role. Well, I suppose she handled it as well as anybody could, given what she had to work with.
Yeah,
because
that is a soul. I mean,
when you just basically say we're going to stop doing daily White House briefings, which has been a tradition going back as far as I can remember, and just say, you know what, we're not going to do this anymore because every single day you're on the defensive about something stupid that your boss tweeted or said. That's a really horrible job.
Well,
are you trying to make me feel sorry for her?
No.
She held it for 2 years.
I'm not. She lied about
lying. This
lying.
was not a secret.
She lied about lies that were told to cover up other lies that were lied about.
I mean, this was not a secret. No. This is not a secret when she took the job, and she kept it for 2 years. So, my feeling is she's either ready to write a book
footsteps
or
of Sean Spicer and took it to another level.
Yeah, exactly.
Things have changed so much with Twitter, and the way he incorporates Twitter is that he feels he doesn't really need to have press briefings. It's imagine, if Nixon was in the White House or something and tweeted, I am not a crook.
Right.
And just leave it at that, and tweet all day. I mean, he's changed the whole landscape of that, and hopefully it comes back after he leaves office.
Well, and the thing is, though, her
transparency.
Her lies to the media and the public are documented in the Mueller report for all time. So that'll be there, that this legacy that she has. And I mean, she's only, 36, 37 years old, something
young,
like that. So she's got a lot of years.
It's not a slip. She said a slip of the tongue.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Slip of the tongue, you may have said, well, I meant, wait a minute, I meant 500 million, not 5 million or whatever. That's a slip of the tongue, but
countless FBI agents wanting Comey fired is not exactly a slip of the tongue.
Yeah, it's a lot more calculated. It's just a calculated lie. But
she's Faust. She's what's the word? She's Mrs. Faust. Whatever. She sold her soul, and now she's just got to wait every day of her life for her final day, and when the devil comes to collect her and suck her down into the.
Well, Trump tweeted out yesterday that he hopes she runs for governor of Arkansas.
Oh yeah.
Let's pray.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah, forward into the 21st century, Arkansas.
So there you go. Hey, by the way, there's lots of cheap real estate in Detroit, everybody. If you're living down in Little Rock and are thinking about somewhere else to go, come on up. We'll take you.
I was on Twitter last night. I saw a picture that was taken yesterday of her and Kellyanne Conway standing next to each other, and Paul Rudnick, who is a very funny screenwriter and film writer in general, said, "Is this the world's worst heart cover band?"
Oh, the Wilson.
Oh, there was. Yeah.
There you go.
I'm always curious, Kellyanne Conway and her husband. How's that working out at home?
I don't know. I mean, you know what? Maybe they're just laughing all the way to the bank because they're both
That's
getting all kinds of
entirely
attention,
possible.
getting paid, and making a bunch of money probably. But, well, Kellyanne Conway, again, she was accused of violating the Hatch Act, which basically means you're not supposed to do political work while you're doing official capacity duties, but she regularly goes on Fox and Friends and all these other shows and trashes all the president's potential opponents,
Right.
which technically you're not supposed to do. President Trump said today on Fox and Friends that there's no way he's going to fire her. And he just said, to me, it looks like they're trying to take away her right to free speech, and that's just not fair.
Yeah.
That was his response to this.
Okay.
There's a reason that these laws are in place.
Of course. I mean, do we have to argue this? It's like-
Well, I mean, look, when you see that the kind of trouble people get in for even sending out like a fundraising letter on the wrong letterhead.
Oh, yeah.
For campaigns, people go to jail for that kind of stuff.
Right, exactly.
And this is not what you're supposed to do. So he's not going to
Alternative
fire her.
facts. Yeah.
And he said, quote, "I think she's a terrific person. She's a tremendous spokeswoman. She's been loyal. She's just a great person." Does that mean she's going to get Sarah Huckabee Sanders' job? She's a great spokesperson?
He didn't fire the washed-up ballet dancer for the Trump organization who plagiarized Melania's convention speech. I mean, it was just like, she's a great, and he always says the same thing. She's a great person, and you can't fire somebody for being utterly incompetent at their job. That wouldn't be fair. You take away her rights of free speech. So anyway.
Well, Kellyanne Conway, is she going to be on the way out the door? I don't think
don't
so.
know.
Unless
They're talking about having Melania's spokeswoman step into the job, but I mean, talk about a job? This is the Maytag repairman of the
Very
white
true.
of the East Wing. I mean, what does Melania ever say other than once in a while, she advocates for children. Children are good, so
I've heard something, I don't know if it's true or not, somebody was saying that she really enjoys SNL, that she finds it very funny.
Oh, okay.
Well, because it's interesting, she must find some humor in it all. I mean, look, her big campaign is anti-bullying, and ha ha ha, and he's like always railing against immigrants, ha ha ha. I mean, here it is. There's probably this little war going on. Okay, you're going to be against immigrants. I'm going to be against bullies.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't even get into the Mexico stuff. The secret agreement.
The secret agreement that he was waving around with it. Yeah. When did that happen? Like 3 days ago?
I know.
It feels like
it's
it
already in
happened
the
last
back.
year.
But we averted a trade war with Mexico, apparently. The auto companies are breathing a little sigh of relief for a little while. We shall see. But Mexico is saying, we haven't signed anything. It's a couple of low-level trade representatives that said, okay, we've got a framework that we'll bring to our bosses and see if we can't work something out. But that's all it was. This
I
is
think
not
that
some
letter
secret
he
thing.
had in there was really something, one of those letters that you get for extending the warranty on your car.
No, the Washington Post
And he
actually
said,
had
just give me
photos.
anything.
And the
I'll
sun
just-
was shining through it, and they were able to transcribe a bunch of stuff based on the fact that he's holding it up against the light. The Post actually transcribed a bunch of it the
It
other
didn't
day.
look like much though.
No,
it was pretty boilerplate.
It was pretty thin.
Yeah.
So,
and a trade agreement, I'm sorry, does not fit on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. That
typically not.
No, not,
considering
not
how much
typically.
discussion there is over this new NAFTA. I mean,
Right.
Something's going on. But interestingly, the stuff that happened this week, Dan Kildee, another congressperson from Michigan, now suggesting that it's time for an impeachment inquiry here. Nancy Pelosi trying to keep this off the radar as much as she can. Let's do the investigations. Let's play it safe. They're worried about the politics of this. But the chorus is getting louder on the Democratic side. I don't know if it's constituents who are pressuring the members or the members themselves that want to see something done.
Well, when you have the guy going on national television and saying, "Hey, sure, I'd take intel from a foreign government on an election opponent," it's really hard to. I mean, this is the true dilemma, and I think we've talked about this before on this show. It's it's a dilemma is a choice between two bad choices, and that's what the Democrats are kind of faced with here. And it's like if they let this go, they're telling the next Trump that as long as the politics are unfavorable to us, we're going to let you get away with this stuff. And
It is just
And
more,
the Republicans
more and
didn't care
more.
back in the 90s.
no, they didn't care at all.
He's just pressing it more and more in terms of the lawlessness that's coming out of there, the ignoring of the laws.
Please
ignoring
don't throw me into
protocol.
the briar patch. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
kind of
it's-
what's going on.
At,
here.
at some point, he's really egging them on, whether intentionally or not.
Well, if your only hope to win back the House of Representatives is that you might get impeached, then
Right.
maybe, just maybe, your message is a little off.
Right.
I mean, maybe your performance is not as good as you think, and the polling numbers are not looking good for him right now in
No.
any of these states. And then when George Stephanopoulos pressed him on the polling, hey, your internal polling data, which he had obviously gotten from a good source, shows you down in 7 key states. Oh, that polling doesn't exist. That's not true. Well, then he goes off the record. Well, let me get the guy on the phone, probably heard exactly what George Stephanopoulos said and tried to ditch the question altogether after
Right.
that. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's not looking good at the moment.
No, it's not. But it's still a long way.
It is a long
until,
way away, and
you
we'll
know.
see. Well, all right, let's get back to Michigan here for just a second because I mentioned Dan Kildee. He, of course, represents Flint. Big news coming out of Dana Nessel's office this week, dropping
big news.
all charges that had already been brought in the Flint investigation over, of course, the tainted water and the lead issues there. Nick Lyons, of course, charges dropped. He had a manslaughter charge against him and
Right.
some other ones. They basically said that the investigation was flawed from the beginning. They are starting from scratch.
Right.
Now, granted, people in Flint are not necessarily happy about this. They want to see somebody pay something for what happened in that community. Dana Nessel, bold move on her part, but
Very bold.
It's it's interesting. I think
they got to message this better than if they want the public to calm down.
Well,
right.
yeah.
Well, I mean, they've dismissed it without prejudice, which means that they can come back and
Yes.
They can refile,
file
right.
charges. I think all along people wondered whether Bill Schuette was using the Flint case as a platform to run for governor. And I
Yes.
think there was a lot of politics involved, and there certainly were questions raised over the charges there. And so I guess in the end, I mean, it makes sense that, Dana Nessel comes in and realizes all the politics involved and says, let's start over again.
It is a super bold move, though, because they've spent $30 million on it in
A ton.
2.5 years, 3 years, something like that, and to say, okay, we're starting this monopoly game over. Everybody turn in your cash and your properties and hotels, and we're just going to start from scratch.
Because I think the question, I mean, you don't really, I mean, generally, if you have a case and you start to build better evidence, you generally don't have to dismiss the charges. So you wonder what it is if they just thought the charges were all wrong, and
Maybe the
whether they
wrong
could
people.
the wrong people, or just the wrong charges
Well,
and stuff. And so you don't want to try to prove something that you don't believe is provable.
They signaled something was going on a couple of weeks ago when they went after Governor Snyder's records. They actually wanted, the phone records and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Although
And that's
he
what-
said
They already had it, but
he
they got it
tweeted,
back.
Yeah.
But here's their beef. They said that some of the defense, people involved in the defense, had an opportunity to weigh in on what stuff should be admissible as evidence. And if that's true, that's not typically the way you do things. You subpoena what you want.
Right.
Then you can negotiate over that kind of stuff at some point as to what's, protected, what's not. But you don't normally, as a defense, get an opportunity to sit there and say, yeah, we don't think that those records are relevant, so therefore you don't get those. If it needs to be redacted, it's redacted.
Right.
But otherwise,
It does. I mean, I think because so many of the state level offices in Michigan have become so politicized that you end up with that that mental image of a Republican negotiating with another Republican over what they think or what evidence should be out there. And the same thing would be, the case with it was 2 Democrats, presumably. So you really do need, I don't know. I heard her make the case for why she felt this needed to be done, and she was pretty persuasive. She was on another radio show this
Well,
morning.
Kim Worthy came out yesterday and said, quote, our team has already identified additional individuals of interest and new information relevant to the Flint water crisis. These investigative leads will be aggressively pursued. Additionally, we will evaluate criminal culpability for all Legionnaires' deaths that occurred after the switch to the Flint River, which was never done by the lawyers appointed by Schuette.
Right.
That's
big stuff.
I think
is.
if they have their sights on Governor Snyder, if they can nab him, I think that would be the ultimate, and the others wouldn't be as important. I mean, even it may have been a little stretch for the emergency managers, as much as neglectful as they were. The charges against them seemed a little bit of a stretch.
Well, I thought the manslaughter charge against Nick Lyons was
also
I thought that was going to be a tough one to prove in court. I'm like, wow, okay, it gets great headlines, but actually proving it in court was going to be really, really difficult. I thought the charges were too much for that. I mean, I thought there could have been something else.
Right. Sure.
But so that's just my opinion. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, so it's tough for me to say, and I haven't seen the evidence.
You don't know all the evidence.
But it sounds to me like they want to reopen this thing. And if you're a resident in Flint, though, they're asking you to be patient. How much patience is left there?
I know. There's not much.
Yeah,
So,
this thing has been going on forever.
I mean, because when they first put out the charges were dismissed, everybody's like, "What?" And then like, well, "No, but we're going to keep looking."
Yeah.
So everybody needs to sort of take a step back.
Presumably they're not going to just have to start from absolute zero. There's going to be. I mean, it's if this is a video game and they're restarting, they wouldn't have to go back to level 1. Presumably they're already at level 42, and maybe they have to pop back to level 40 or something. I don't know. She said there were millions more documents that needed to be looked at that were not looked at, and so if you're looking at what you believe to be a corrupted investigation, maybe this is the way you deal with it. I'm not a lawyer, so.
But we play one on the radio. I'm just kidding. I should remind folks, this is the week that was on Deadline Detroit. I'm Craig Fahle. Allan Lengel is here. Nancy Derringer is here. Going over some of the big stories of the week. A lot of stuff that, of course, is on Deadline Detroit right now. I thought this was interesting. Here in Detroit, we've got these green light stations everywhere that have these camera systems. But apparently the facial recognition technology on these cameras is a little bit beyond what we were led to believe was going on with these. It's really, really sophisticated stuff, and perhaps on par with or more advanced than most other cities in America that utilize camera technology to monitor crime and things like that. Interesting to see the blowback in the community about this. I mean, there's a lot of people that would love to see crime reduced, and if you can get convictions out of this, great. But at the same time, the privacy rights, we're having a real debate about that at the moment.
I think also that one of the issues is that particularly faces of people of color, it's less accurate. And when you're in the city where it's predominantly black city, I think there's an issue there.
Even artificial intelligence tends to pick up the prejudices, oftentimes the unacknowledged prejudices of the people who built the systems. And so, I mean, that's been shown. I don't know. You're a Google user?
Yes.
Do you use Google Photo? I uploaded all of my pictures
to
to Google Photo a few months ago, and it took a couple hours. I had quite a lot, and within 10 minutes, it was sending me messages saying, "Do you want all of these people in one, or this person in a separate folder?" It was identifying within my.
It didn't even ask me; it just did it.
Yeah, well, it was saying, what do you want to label this folder of this person, of this person? It identified my daughter as a toddler and as a college graduate. It knew the same face.
Wow.
I have had 2 dogs that look very similar to one another. It figured out those were 2 separate dogs. It's really creepy.
It knew the difference between Rover and Spot. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
The technology is amazing. I was at a friend's house maybe a year or 2 ago, I can't remember, and he had somebody was over and playing a Whitney Houston song, and they were singing it, and on the piano and all that, and I recorded it and put it on Facebook, and within about 3 to 5 minutes, Facebook took it down and said,
Copyright violation.
Copyright violation. And I was blown away by the technology,
Right.
Because I know there's not somebody sitting in a room going, "Wait a minute."
Yeah. Black Mirror just dropped some new episodes on Netflix this week. So, I mean, this stuff is top of mind with me.
It's
there you
sort
go.
of like there was a movie about God, and it was a comedy, but just all these computer readouts or everybody, and and you're thinking like, this is how God must operate. He's got Facebook technology.
Well, I'll tell you what. There's a show about God that's out there right now that's got the kid from Harry Potter who played Harry Potter and Steve Buscemi as God. On one of the channels. I can't remember what it is, but it is funny.
Okay.
It's pretty good. Oh, it's on TBS, I think, or something like that.
Good
Anyway, a couple of other stories that got some attention here in town this week. Yesterday, there was supposed to be a big SEIU, the Service Employees International Union, strike. They're calling for a strike by security workers for Secure America.
Who are not unionized.
They're not. They're not in the union yet.
Yeah.
They're trying to organize them.
Right.
And so they wanted to stage a big work walkout yesterday, and they had a few people that showed up in the morning. And then on lunch hour, they did something again. And then after work, they did something. But everybody did their shifts yesterday. They're obviously rallying for a higher minimum wage.
Right.
I think they're at about $11-12 an hour now. They're asking for 15, which seems to be the universal call right now for what the hourly wage needs to be for somebody not to qualify for food stamps working full time.
Yeah, for somebody who's carrying a Glock.
But, I think,
Security guards. Well, not those guys.
Well,
like I said, they don't have union
armed.
protection to do this kind of stuff right
Right.
now. So obviously they're not going to walk off the jobs because they could be fired for doing something along those lines. But as far as getting people's attention, I thought they did okay yesterday.
Yeah.
We all knew about it. We were
Right.
out looking for them.
Right.
They were out around all these buildings down here
A lot of
yesterday.
media attention, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, as far as going about it, if you're SEIU and you're trying to recruit these people to become part of your union, I think they did a decent job yesterday.
They did do a decent job, and I think it's. I was looking at the Facebook comments on our story, and I feel bad that we didn't probably make it clearer that these people are not in a union and they do not work for Dan Gilbert.
Yeah.
I mean, they chose
for
the
Secure
Gilbert
America.
buildings. They work for Secure America, which is based in Atlanta.
They got the contract with Rock.
with
Right,
Rock.
right.
Yeah, exactly. So, but
And-
they're because I was seeing people going, "Oh, he's a billionaire. You should pay them more." It's like, no, he's not paying them at all. He's paying their company.
They made a
to
bid.
provide them. Yes,
he pays
exactly.
it. That's
right.
the way it works. He's not negotiating
No.
directly with these individuals. But I'd be interested to see if it gets any traffic, though. I mean, there's been a real discussion about whether or not the minimum wage is viable, and especially in a city
Right.
The size of ours.
Security guards take a certain amount of risk. Probably not at. It probably is harder to see at a downtown Detroit office building, but they do. They end up getting shot at sometimes, and and hurt and killed and everything else. And so I don't think $15 an hour is unreasonable.
No, probably not. But like I said, any sort of a situation where you have somebody who's working full time for
Right.
minimum wage, you
Right.
still qualify for public assistance.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to address that.
Yeah. I think we
Right.
should.
That's just something that needs to be looked at
Right.
in this country. And
It's going to be a very thorny problem because as more people move into cities, housing in cities
Gets more expensive.
Gets more expensive. That's where the work is. And if we don't, you could easily end up with one of these world cities things like Mexico City. Where you have the elite live closer in and the less elite exist on garbage pails or garbage piles around the city. So,
well, we've only got a few minutes left. I want to get to two more
yeah,
stories.
Let's leave on a good note.
Let's talk about. Well, this is sad. Marygrove College announced that is closing down, and it's been an anchor in that neighborhood for a long time, trying to hang on, just not attracting enough students. They tried something radical by going to a graduate-only program. That didn't work the way that they wanted. They just weren't attracting enough students. Apparently, it's going to live on as an educational community in some capacity, which is important. But that is such a beautiful little campus. If anybody's never been there, it really is pretty.
I hate to see the liberal arts taken in the
Yeah,
gut like this because I believe in liberal arts education, but we have successfully turned higher ed into a very expensive trade school. There's this idea that an 18-year-old kid needs to know exactly what he wants to be when he grows up and go to major in the right thing and all this other stuff. I tell this story often. The biggest vertical blur in my life right now is a friend of mine who I won't violate his privacy, but he was an English major at the University of Michigan. And he told me once, he said, breaking down a novel, analyzing a poem, he said, is a problem-solving skill that I use every single day in my work that has nothing to do with English literature.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's important. Liberal arts teaches you how to think, and how to think is an important skill.
And I'm a firm believer in education for education's sake. You want to be an art
Absolutely.
major? Be an art major.
Yeah.
Because guess what? you're going to be a little bit more enlightened than I am.
Yes.
And that's important. There's
Yes.
nothing wrong with that.
Yes. And so much training happens on the job now. I mean, you can learn
supposed to.
business principles in an undergrad B school, but you're not going to learn stuff. I mean, you're not necessarily going to learn stuff like that. How to break down a sonnet and look at each part and figure out how it plays together and what we need to know about it.
And it's one of those things that also enriches your life when
It
you do that
does.
kind of stuff.
Yes.
Reading. It's amazing how well that works.
Yeah.
You could be just another brick in the wall, or you could jump over the wall. Some think about it that way.
Or write a poem about the
All right, can we have a little fun with Warren?
Oh, when is Warren ever not
Endless
fun?
fun.
Endless
Deadline
fun.
Detroit.
Well, the Supreme Court finally put the smackdown on this term limits controversy in Warren and just said, "Oh hell no,
Come on, people.
A fraud that the
Get outta here.
council members were trying to.
Exactly. I mean, I love the
perpetrate
argument
on.
they were trying to make just to give people, they were allowing people to stay beyond the term limits that they passed in Warren back in the 90s.
Yeah.
Which is 12
by saying
years.
that an at-large council position is like a separate branch of the legislative function
like the
than the
Senate.
district
Yeah.
positions. So therefore, you could serve in both of them for different
For 12
amounts
years,
of time.
and then
Exactly.
12 years as a district representative.
And so that interpretation was smacked down by the Supreme Court here in Michigan the other day, and they said no. And Jim Fouts is furious. He's like, "We're going to have a bunch of newcomers on there." Blah blah. I'm asking, is that a bad thing necessarily?
Yeah.
Because Warren, such a great history,
and with a plaintive cry, the Metro Detroit's only bicameral city council
exactly.
goes down in flames. So there you go. Or goes up in flames.
All right, one last thing that we'll get to. Well, you know what? I'm going to have a much bigger discussion on infrastructure spending in the state over the course of the next few weeks on the show, and it's a little bit too serious to really get into here. But this
Yeah.
call to not fund the Gordie Howe Bridge. Why are we writing Canada a check? Yeah, if you don't think that somebody has got somebody else's interests in mind when they make a statement like that, you'd probably be wrong. Probably.
No.
Probably.
Yeah. And this is the same committee that suggested selling the Blue Water Bridge.
Half the Blue Water
Half
Bridge.
the Blue
Our
Water
half.
Bridge. Yeah.
But no, let's talk about this. Big news in Ann Arbor. We may have one of the Obama girls coming to Ann Arbor. Sasha apparently is coming to the University of Michigan.
yeah.
She's maybe coming to
We
the
are
University of
somebody.
Michigan.
Possibly. Well, no, that's a big deal. It's a nice feather in
Oh,
the
it's
cap for the
prestigious.
university.
It's very
for sure.
prestigious. Yeah, it's very prestigious.
I mean,
I
he's not
spent a single year at the University of Michigan as a journalism fellow 14 years ago.
I went to some football
midlife.
games there. I went to some football games
Yeah,
there.
I'm sure you did. And our big celebrity that year was one of the fellows was walking across the diag, and he saw the girl who won the national spelling bee that was in that documentary about it called Spellbound. So
Wow.
that was it. That
Well,
was
you
some-
see,
yeah.
I mean, if you look, Chelsea Clinton went to Stanford, which
Yeah.
is a very prestigious school, and so it's nice to have Michigan,
Yeah.
to have a president's daughter
Sure.
show up.
Oh, that's-
Absolutely.
that
Well, his
is-
other daughter's at Georgetown, correct?
No, Harvard.
Harvard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, Malia's
Yeah,
at
I mean,
Harvard.
Harvard,
Sasha's-
Yale, they get all the.
I forget
you know.
these things,
Yeah.
but it's
All
kind of
these-
nice though. Public university, but the University of
Yeah.
Michigan has had some high-profile students in the past.
I know. I hope she likes winter. So she gets a lot of
She's
it.
from Chicago.
Didn't
I mean, come on.
Madonna?
Nah, she grew up in-
Madonna went to U of M.
She
before
dropped
was-
out, and
before she was
Madonna's
famous.
daughter went to the U of M, and I don't know if she finished or not. My daughter did see her on the M bus one day.
In your
Yeah,
art
so she's
school?
very
Well, there
pretty.
you
Yeah,
go.
she went. No, she went to the. She was in the music theater
Oh,
program,
okay.
I believe.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I figured we'd end on something somewhat positive.
All
Everybody
Sorry,
likes,
Michigan
everybody
State.
likes Sasha Obama. I mean,
Hell.
we shall see. That's right.
Yeah, that
Hail
would
to
have been
the
something if
victors.
she would have went to Michigan State. Then.
No, that would. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ferris.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oakland University.
No offense,
Yay.
Ferris. No offense. I went to Western, so I'm not.
Right.
I'm not.
Or really cool if
Western.
she went to Wayne State.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, I worked at Wayne State for a long time. Love that institution.
Yeah.
So they're a fine place.
I love
But
Wayne
anyway,
State.
Nancy, Allan, thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thanks to Michael Lucido for engineering our broadcast today. Thanks to
Yay.
all of you for watching this today. And don't forget, if you want to watch this or share it with your friends, you can find it at deadlinedetroit.com. We'll have the fully produced video, fully baked, put up there in a little bit
As
later on
opposed to the
today.
half-baked live version.
That's exactly. Well, we do all that stuff at the
This
beginning.
is the
It's-
fastest moving
Half
half
hour.
hour of my week, and I always enjoy it. So.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Okay.
That means you're stuck next week.
Yeah, all right.
And we'll do this again next
Locked in
Friday.
now.
But in the meantime, check out the Craig Fahle Show each and every day. You can find it wherever you find podcasts. So you can always find it at deadlinedetroit.com. Have a fantastic weekend. It is beautiful out there today. Hopefully it sticks around for a couple of days this time. We'll see you next time.
Hey, the Craig Fahle Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible by Samaritas, which is the state's largest private foster care and adoption agency. But they do a heck of a lot more than that. They've been serving homeless families, persons with disabilities, abused and trafficked women. They're also one of the largest resettlement agencies in the state. They provide market rate and affordable housing for seniors and HUD housing for families. And they also have skilled nursing, memory care, and rehab communities in Grand Rapids, Cadillac, and Saginaw. Samaritas, thanks for their support. Great organization doing great stuff all around the state.